Welcome to Breaking Ceilings, Breaking Ground, the podcast celebrating the women redefining real estate development. I'm Molly McCabe, and alongside my co-host Jill Ferrari, we're sitting down with the developers, the visionaries, and builders whose projects and instincts are reshaping skylines and communities. What strikes you when you talk to the women in this space is just how expansive their thinking is. Profit and community impact aren't competing priorities. In fact, they're part of the same calculation. That mindset is producing some of the most innovative development work in North America right now. This is a conversation about what's being built, the deals, the risks, the pivots, and the wins. So let's get into it. Jill?
Today, we are honored to welcome Belinda Watts, the founding partner of Row Partners, a certified woman-owned owner's representative and project management firm in New York City. With over 30 years in the built environment, including a 25-year tenure as a project director at Gensler, she's led iconic adaptive reuse projects like Christie's at Rockefeller Center and the Burberry flagship on 57th Street. She launched Row Partners in 2020 to bring a more collaborative, transparent approach to project delivery, serving commercial, residential, and cultural clients across the tri-state area. Belinda is also a small-scale developer herself, having bought and renovated properties, and was recently featured by the Women's Development Collaborative, where she shared her playbook on adaptive reuse, capital, and becoming a developer. Welcome, Belinda.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
We are just delighted to have you with us. And I want to start right out of the gate and talk a little bit about your projects that you're working on right now. And we will circle back to your arc and your career history, but let's get started right away on what are you currently working on? What are those projects and where are they located?
So for Row Partners, I'm working on 4 different projects or 4 different clients right now. One of them is a co-op on 14th Street, where it's a 400-unit co-op between 5th and 6th Avenue. They have a retail 200 long foot retail presence on 14th Street, which has undergone or is undergoing a kind of a regeneration. It's always been a bit of a rough and tumble sort of no man's zone between kind of South Midtown and downtown. And it's sort of in the 2000s as it started to turn around. And then Union Square kind of they renovated it, I think, in the late 90s, and that began to regenerate the whole area. Now, interestingly, 25 years later, this indicates the long arc of real estate. 14th Street went through one sort of revitalization, and now it's really going through its second generation of revitalization as luxury condominiums come to 14th Street or larger upper scale or upper income residential developments come to sort of 14th Street. And so this co-op recognized that from going from a co-op that was probably started in the 90s, I have a brother-in-law who lived in this building in the late 70s, just coincidentally as a rental. And he was like, it was kind of a sketchy area, right? So he went back to where he came from. And anyway, it co-opted, I think, probably in the 90s. And now, so it was a building built in the 60s. It was a rental. I think they have a couple of rent-stabilized tenants still in the building. But they now have these buildings around them that are state-of-the-art residential buildings, and they recognize that for their units or their shares to maintain value in the neighborhood, they needed to up their game. And so what they have done is all of this retail band was leased out to a single entity. When that lease ended, the co-op took back the lease and the operations of the retail spaces. So they refurbished, they kind of cut up the spaces differently. They moved a tenant around so they could upgrade and right size the retail units. And they did a whole new facade on the ground level to bring together as a continuous band the frontage of the building. Many of these building fronts get very broken up with individual storefronts. The one of the board members is an architect. He was like, this needs to be a continuous band, and they've signed a very signage guidelines, all that kind of stuff. I mean, and we've just finished that project. I have a final walkthrough next week. What that for was they are using this, they got back some space for themselves and they got some funds, better funding, right? And so they're taking that space and those funds and turning those into amenities for the building, which is, at the moment it has a laundry. That would be about it, honestly. Yeah, laundry. That would be the only in-building shared amenity. So what they're bringing it, they went out and did a survey with all the shareholders, et cetera, and they're doing a lounge, a kids' playroom, a fitness room, and just a sort of slightly better, some storage, bike storage, and much better facilities for packages, because they get, 400 units, they get completely overwhelmed at Christmas time with packages. They have an area at their reception area now with cabinets for those packages, but the cabinets are millwork and they're pretty beaten up. They were very nicely done at the time. And so now they need a proper room to really manage this properly. And so I've just done a whole RFP process, and I'm working on the contract for the new design team who will bring that forward. So that's one of my projects. And then another one I just mentioned to you it's a condo. This is a very small project. It's a condominium in Brooklyn, which has some exterior repairs to be done. It's not a particularly old building. It used EFIS. There are cracks in the EFIS, which is causing water damage into couple of the units. In the scale of things, it's not very large, but the damage is ongoing, and you can't expect people to live in a leaking apartment. So there's that, and that's very interesting process. As I just told you, there's a lot more to insurance than we'd ever like to know. So there's that, and then I have a French private equity firm who is moving into Carnegie Hall Tower, who is doing a pre-build. So I represent them. They don't have real strong operation. They have teams here, but they don't have sort of office management, strong presence here. So they've asked me to represent them here. And for that, I do a little bit of design tweaking, and then I often think of myself as the translator. I think of myself
You mean
as
translator between the owner and the
client, exactly.
Yeah.
Between the gobbledygook called industry jargon that we all use on a daily basis, to the client who's sitting there going, and what does EFIS mean anyway? Yes. So that is about just working with the landlord as the final numbers are coming in, and that will start construction kind of Labor Day. And then I have I think I'm forgetting something. Then I am actually working for a very large contractor in the city who is working on a flagship retail store on Fifth Avenue. And they're down to a crunch time. And they've brought me on to be their quality control, quality assurance manager. I mean, I've just started that. I do always feel like I now know where everything is on the job, and I understand their jargon, and I kind of know my way around the building. I know all the team members. I've been on it about 3 weeks, I think, but it's now about to come into a big push. So that's fascinating, particularly as it goes to one of the questions here about how did I come across Row Partners with this idea of kind of a more collaborative and transparent project. we all like to stand in our corners and cross our arms and go like. I just go, oh my God, was I really like that when it was me? I'm sure I was.
Well, we aren't going to make any, aspersions there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's interesting. But so, and then I have a couple of proposals out for some office pre-builds.
Okay.
And I find that that's a good niche for me because I bring to the table a design eye and a technical capacity that a typical owner's rep project management firm doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So
just for so that's Row Partners, and then
you have a lot.
My other business, which is my property was really property management. I do own 2 buildings, one in Brooklyn, which is a 2-family. That's all very quiet, lovely tenant. That's great. We're neighbors. We look after each other, receive each other's packages, let each other in if we forget our keys. And then upstate, there's the 4-family home house that we have, which was student rentals. And I have been changing it over to, market rate rentals. With the 4 units, I still got 2 students in there, but they came back. They were there last year. They came back. I'm like, why would I go anywhere else? These are great kids.
Right.
And then what I do is, as a tenant moves out, I will renovate it to a better standard so that it doesn't look like crappy old kind of student rentals. I don't have anything active there right now other than just ongoing maintenance. What I am quite relieved about is it's about to start term. I don't have new tenants moving in. I don't have new students moving in. That is just such a time drag. Like, I don't know whether there's the noise outside. What was that? Because these are most of them are coming from an urban environment and they've never lived with, like coyotes in the hills or mice running around outside. I know.
We've talked about your history and your experience, and I'd love for our audience to hear more about all of that because I think it's fascinating where you've come from physically, and experientially. Tell us about your journey. How did you get to where you are today?
I think the short story of that is I don't particularly like taking no for an answer, and I'm not very big on precedent, right? So just because everybody else went that way, that doesn't mean to say I can't go that way, right? So that is, and that is, I guess, existential answer to that question. Physically and logically, it was, I'm Australian, and I grew up on a sheep farm in Australia with 3 sisters. With a mother and a grandmother and a dad. And I think that actually did really shape who I am today because I, grew up in an environment where I could go and explore. I went to school. I was the only girl in the class. As I said, I had 3 kids in the class. One was my boyfriend, and one was my cousin, and then there was me, so it was pretty. It's like
Big school.
It was a big school, right? I mean, and actually, no, it was in grades. It was 1 through 7 were all in the same classroom. And then it must have been years 1 through 4 or something were in one classroom. And then 5, 6, and 7 were in the other classroom. I mean, there are 20, 30 kids in the school. Again, I was related to most of them, or they were my sisters kind of thing, right? Anyway, it was a town of 50 people. They're probably 75 now, and I'm related to half of them. And they still live there.
Wow.
Anyway, I go back there. Anyway, so that was my fairly sheltered, but at the same time, encouraging environment, right?
That is quite a shift.
And that came about because I went to architecture school in Australia, and I did a Bachelor of Architecture in Australia. Again, that was the age. Oh God, I hated this saying when it was oh, you're becoming a career woman. It was anyway. And so as a result of doing that Bachelor of Architecture, I won a scholarship, and I took that scholarship and went to Pratt Institute to do a master's in architecture. I looked at a whole bunch of places. This was 79, 80. I went, where do I really want to go party? So I went to New York. Sorry. This is not a terribly intellectual conversation. And I was like, oh, they're just going to have an adventure there, basically. I wouldn't say that it turned out to be so adventurous. It was a pretty tough time. Like, I just did that, really. Yeah, anyway.
But you made it.
But I made it, exactly.
You made it.
I hung in there. Right. And I just, I always went to places that interested me and I knew that would look good on my resume. I was quite focused on, it's good to be able to say you worked at Gensler.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
There's a
I got right. Exactly. I didn't know that when I started at Gensler. Gensler was barely on the map in New York when I started, but I worked in other firms that had that cachet. I worked at Raphael Vignoli's office. I did tensile structures. I did modular structures. So these were things that were just, I think, showed an interest and a flexibility in my work. And I worked at a fairly well-known, small at the time, New York firm. But, again, had a cachet that just takes you to the next step and the next step. And, I haven't been at Gensler for 6 years now. But you say you worked at Gensler and they go, oh, and you were there for 25 years, So anyway, it's
interesting to me because your arc shows quite a host of different experiences, starting on that sheep farm in Australia to working with these what are now well-known architecture firms. And you talking about, tensile structures and other sorts of very kind of cutting edge design work. How have all of your experiences, would you say, shape how you think about place and design and what you get involved with in some of your development projects?
I think, I don't know if I think about place very often, honestly.
Interesting.
I need to always redefine it, right? I think the thing that I've learned most about is interior architecture. Most people think of architecture as the shell, the exterior. The part that has made me think more about it is the interior architecture and our relationship to that and how it can shape our lives, but our emotional lives. Like, if you live in a crappy house, you have a crappy life. It's like, why do I, I want my rental projects to look good because selfishly, I don't want to have to be worried about them falling down. And also, I know that it'll attract different people will respect the place that they're in. If it's kind of falling down, why do I care about it? But if I've taken the care to make it look good for them, then tenants behave accordingly and they care about it. I mean, it was a whole thing that was called the broken windows policy in the 90s. If you just put a piece of plywood and paint it as if somebody's in the house, people respond differently in a community than if it's just trash, ruin and abandoned, people will treat it accordingly. And so I do think that care is one of the things care for the physical space is probably the thing that is how I think about place, as opposed to a design. It doesn't have to be fabulous design, but it should be cared for design, right? Somebody's thought about it. Somebody's tending it, somebody's kind of mending it and has a plan for it in the future.
Yeah. And we didn't put this on the list, but you mentioned that you're working on a flagship on Fifth Avenue, and I just came back from New York with my daughter and have been reading about, Ulta is doing a new 4-story flagship in Times Square. We visited some of the new flagships. What, when it comes to what's next and what you're working on, looking at this, focus on experiential retail, and to your point about the interior environment and how people experience space, what are your thoughts on retail in New York and seeing these flagships come? Do you think, we're headed in a positive direction, and do you see yourself playing a role in these new flagships and how people interact in these retail spaces? Because we were at the Addicted flagship on Fifth Avenue, and the experience for both parents and teenagers in this space was very thoughtfully curated. And it sounds like we're going to see more of that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do not. I mean, I'm sorry, I do not. I'm not a shopper. Uniqlo is my neighborhood, is my experience. I do think people talk about the AI, the whole kind of internet shopping packages that the co-ops have to deal with. But at the end of the day, how many of these retailers, how many of the shoppers actually go to shop and walk out with a bag, and how many are going to it more like a theme park as to spend time inside, something to look at versus, just walking down the street? I don't know. I mean, I think the one thing that online shopping and COVID taught us is the importance of retail in activating the street.
Right.
And I don't think we realized that what was activating the street was the retail.
Uh-huh.
It was people coming and going to do their whatevers, right? But now we don't do that. And the hollowness that has resulted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea how you can't have enough community centers and indoor golf centers and things to bring activity to that band, right? Now, that being said, the retail the co-op on 14th Street, they're full. Like they had it on the market within 12 months, they were full.
Yeah.
And some of it was only, they couldn't sort of lease stuff out until it became available so people could walk through it. But they never had an empty space on their hands.
Yeah.
So that's location. And the quality of the product, realizing that, you got to have a quality product. You have a quality product and it sells a lot faster or leases, you kind of, you meet your goals faster, I believe.
Yeah. It circles directly back to what you said earlier about taking care of the interior space. And that's the same ethos that you're talking about on the street level, is if we build community, if we build a place where people want to be and they care about their place, whether that's their individual place or their street or their block or what have you, that makes a difference in how we interact and move through the world. And our intention for our activities there. And I think, you were very clear in your intentionality in building your student in the housing that's formerly partially student housing, which will be more market rate housing. And then for your own place that you have your duplex in the city. I think that's a really thoughtful way of looking at it.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we wanted to ask you about, because I think all three of us are in this category of women who led a long career in commercial real estate in one area or another, and then transitioned to doing our own developments a little bit later in our career versus, the students of mine at the University of Michigan that are planning to, finish their master's and then do their own development projects right away. Is there any advice that you would give to women who are later in their career and want to do their own projects, start their own projects? Or is there anything from your personal experience on your student housing that you would want them to be aware of?
I think that it doesn't have to be the ground up, 25 unit something or other. Yes, it can be taking a 2-family, a 4-family, a small apartment building, and it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. I mean, it's not the same, but it's the same, right? Just think about the scale of it. Just because it's not 25, plus units, a new build, doesn't mean to say it's not development. It's not ownership. It's not property management and the responsibility that comes with it. So I think that, again, it's like, just don't look at it through through the same lens. Look at it through your own lens, basically.
Right.
One of the things that Jill and I've talked a little bit about is, again, going back to this sort of mid-career person, is whether or not we're planning on retiring anytime soon. And the three of us talked about this on an earlier call about, are you planning on retiring anytime soon? Because I know I'm certainly not. And I think, what we're seeing, at least through our conversations with these women that we've been talking with, is I'm calling it the third ascent. It's like you start your career, then you move into mid-career, and then people go, oh, well, you're going to retire now. And I'm like, oh, no, we are just starting. Do you feel that same way?
Absolutely. The only thing that
you started Row Partners, 5-6 years ago?
Right.
Yeah, when I was 67, something like that.
It's amazing.
I don't see any retirement for you. You're having fun.
No, we're just
I'm having fun.
winding
The
up.
other thing is, I think, does my husband want me to... my husband, do you think I should retire? And he goes, please don't. It's not me bothering him. I like that. Anyway, so no, I don't, I go, oh, do people think I'm weird because I'm still working? Like, do they think and they go, damn it, this is what, hanging out on the golf course is great. I actually enjoy sitting around the table thinking about how to solve a problem. This is what makes me want to get up every day, except for dealing with QuickBooks. Sorry.
Hire that out. That's what you hire out for,
Well, yes, I'm gauging there. And so this whole process of building a business and how do you do that? And I'm doing it, step at a time. I didn't have kind of I had big aspirations, but I had pretty small goals, right? Like if I can get through this year, I'm good. But, it'd be great if I could build something and could sell it at the end. That would be amazing. So yeah, I try to have big aspirations so you can move forward. But if I kind of just get through this year, it's great. Anyway, so
aspiring big, but small plans. I like that.
There you go.
Well, it's such a difference when you come from corporate. When you come from corporate and then you move to running your own business, that is an entirely different model. And I think that for some people is kind of a scary shift. And
it was absolutely fascinating to have. What I didn't realize was the efficiency of the corporate structure, where you don't have to spend 2 hours on a call with QuickBooks trying to figure out why something is happening, right?
You just call the finance department.
Well, exactly. Or try and duck under the table when they were looking for you. Anyway, but I brought on a project administrator, right, who's going to help me with some of the administrative pieces of a project, such as tracking contracts and invoices and things like that, and costs. And so to do that, and I wanted to have it so that we were all working on the same files together. It wasn't like, oh, have you uploaded that, blah, blah, blah. So I set this all up, right? So it took, that took me like 10 hours last week by the time we did it one time, and it uploaded and I had to resync to everything. And then but I realized what was going on. That wasn't the way I wanted it. I mean, I have an IT person who helps me do this, by the way. I don't do it myself. And then I realized what was done. And then that's not right. That's sort of clunky. We have to redo it, right? So we had to redo it again, honestly.
Yeah.
But then again, having been in that corporate structure, I realized the importance of having structure, which is why I've set these things up, why I don't want to have to call up Amanda and say, have you finished that document? Can you send it to me, please? I want to be able to go into the file and look at it and know that if I correct it or make a comment or add something to it, she can go in there and take a look and see what I've done. So I learned a lot about things that I would never have been exposed to by being at Gensler if I'd gone to stayed with a smaller firm, or I'd started my own firms earlier, right? I mean, so yeah. It was like, I really felt like, well, the rug was, it was like the rug was pulled out from under my feet. Like, oh my God, now what am I doing? And just realizing the importance of it and taking, again, taking the time or just being patient enough with everything in myself to be able to put it back together again, honestly, in a way that works for a small business. So, yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, we want to ask if there are anything that you'd like our audience to be aware of, any opportunities, any projects that you're looking at. Are you hiring or are you looking for projects or work? So is there anything that you'd like to mention before we wrap?
I think I could probably say yes to all three pieces of that in a way. To grow my business from where I am now, I do need to take on somebody else. But to do that, I need to have a little better clarity of the pipeline, right? So what do I have in terms of the project pipeline? I have a couple of proposals out now. That would be great. I could probably manage those myself. But if I feel like, so then it's the chicken and the egg. If I was talking to a candidate who would be a good project manager or want to come in and join this thing called Row Partners, then I'd be more like, got to go out, find something. But while I don't have that candidate, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not really all that. I'm not going to hurry up and go and look for another one, right? So I could be yes, I would be looking for a project manager because with that, or a cohort to join Row Partners. So then I could look for new projects and vice versa, right? Chicken and the egg. And then given the experience that I have with sort of small development, it would be good to go out and do a small development in upstate New York for a small housing project. There is just, I have 4 units. I get calls Belinda, have you got a house? And there's just nothing up there. But it's incredibly difficult to make the numbers work, honestly. When you hear of a house being built for $2,000 a square foot, you have to be able to build something for like $200 a square foot to be able to, for people to rent it for $1,000 a month. It's a real... I never really understood penciling out until I started thinking about that. And I went, this is what you call penciling out.
Right.
Yeah. So that, and the other thing is, like in the little town where I have upstate, there's just no land available. Right. There's like 2 empty lots and that's it. So it's a real, you have to come in with, you really have to come in. I think there's a couple of sites that you could probably take on, but they're kind of like in they're in like zone C of a flood zone. So you could build in them, but you have to be able to lift everything up higher. And there's a whole site cost to be able to do that before you've built anything.
Right.
A friend of mine was looking at doing modular housing development of like 20 units. And he just could never figure out the money.
Yeah.
To get it to work at the end of the day. I need to catch up with him to see how. I hadn't spoken to him about 18 months, but he was having a real struggle with it, which was surprising. Yeah.
Always. Molly and I talk about that all the time. The ongoing challenge, how the capital stack.
Capital stack, interest rates, all of the above, labor. So it sounds like you could take on another project in New York City. And if you took on another 1 or 2 projects in New York City, then you could take on a project manager in New York City. So if there's anyone in New York City out there looking for somebody who can help them with a project, call Belinda. And if you are a property owner or somebody like that in upstate New York who wants to partner with somebody who's amazing, call Belinda because she can help you get that done.
Well, thank you very much. Yes.
And how would you like these folks to contact you? Should they visit your website? And if so, what is that?
Yes, look at my website. Maybe LinkedIn would be better.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode
Thank
of
you.
Breaking Ceilings, Breaking Ground. Belinda, thank you so much for being with us and having such a real conversation about the challenges of transitioning, the value of a career with integrity, working with somebody like Gensler and how that's helped you, and just talking about your journey. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun boring.
Yes. We hope you found today's conversation as inspiring and empowering as Molly and I did. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe to Breaking Ceilings, Breaking Ground, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know a woman in real estate development whose story should be shared, reach out through our website, www.breakingceilingsbreakingground.com. We'd love to feature her. Don't forget to leave us a review and share this podcast with your network. Together, we can continue to amplify the voices of women shaping the future of real estate.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.